wormholes, particle physics, extra dimensions. Are the wonders of so-called reality really what they appear to be? Or do we exist in an elaborate hologram? Is our universe the result of random activity or the result of intelligent design? If a creator was involved, can we discover him through our perception of divine order? This is Into the Multiverse with Josh Peck.
Frankly, my multiverse, I don't give a multiverse. Well, here to give a multiverse is myself and the woman who puts up with me, Christina.
I don't know why I do it.
I don't know either. Christina Peck. Christina, how are you doing?
Ready to give a multiverse? Is that the right, thing to say?
Well, it'll do.
Okay.
Today, we are talking about the mysteries of time and entropy. Fascinating topic. Before we get into that, though, if you haven't done so already, subscribe to our YouTube channel, which Christina will give you.
Oh, yep. Absolutely. YouTube.com/SkywatchTV_official.
Yes, and make sure to check us out on Roku, and you can go to skywatchtv.com and find all sorts of excellent content. So, the mysteries of time and entropy. That's a big... It's a big discussion.
Very huge. Exactly. Well, we can explain a little bit more about entropy and what it is. And it's from order to chaos. Mm-hmm. Entropy is the cause of everything horrible. I can say that. That's why things age, decay, degrade. Mm-hmm. It becomes chaotic disorder. Mm-hmm. Entropy, if you do not clean your house for a while, that's entropy. Yeah. A huge mess. It's because chaos, entropy, it happens.
And entropy in itself is kind of a property of time, almost.
It happens.
We could think of it that way. The more time goes by, the more things degrade. Mm-hmm. If you leave fruit out on the table, it's going to rot.
Molds, it rots, it ferments. Yep. Things start to smell.
Yeah, it's a property of time. And time in itself even. That's interesting because it's something that we don't, I think sometimes we almost take for granted. We don't really think, if we had to, how would we define time? If somebody asked you, Christina, what is time? What an impossible question to...
You really can't break time down.
Yeah, it's something we experience every day.
We understand it without thinking about it, but when you really get down to it, it's a deep subject, and the definition of time and via the dictionary is insane.
Oh, yeah, actually, and I'll read that just so even dictionary.com has even had trouble with
explaining time.
And I can't fault them. It's an impossible concept to try to explain. But this is the dictionary.com definition of time, and we're just bringing this up because it's kind of funny. The system of those sequential relations that any event has to any other as past, present, or future, indefinite, and continuous duration, regarded as that in which events succeed one another. Mystery solved.
Yep. There you go.
Well, that's the end of this episode. No, but yeah, even like dictionary.com, it's just an impossible thing to really grasp or put into words. But it's something that we never really think about having to do. Mm-hmm. I've never been called on to everybody knows what time is, but none of us can explain it. No. Actually, St. Augustine struggled with this, and a lot of theologians and philosophers and people all throughout time have struggled with this. But this is a quote from St. Augustine. He says, "What is time? If no one asks me, I know. If I wish to explain it to one that asketh, I know not."
Right.
That's exactly what we're going through right now. So we can relate. He has another quote here that I thought was really interesting because he was so confused by the concept of time, he almost threw out the concept altogether. He thought of time as all time is just like a single block of space-time, and that's it. The future really doesn't exist. Only our present conception of what might happen exists. The past doesn't exist. Only our present memories
of the past
of what happened exist. Yeah. So he didn't think that anything beyond the present existed. So he tried to explain that.
Yeah.
And here's a quote. What is by now evident and clear is that neither future nor past exist, and it is inexact language to speak of 3 times, past, present, and future. Perhaps it would be exact to say there are 3 times a present of things past, a present of things present, a present of things to come. In the soul, there are these 3 aspects of time, and I do not see them anywhere else. The present considering the past is memory. The present considering the present is immediate awareness. The present considering the future is expectation. Now, I don't personally agree, but that is actually interesting way to look at it. I mean, that's a good, like...
that's a better definition of it than dictionary.com.
Yeah, it is. It is. But I do believe that the past and the future are actual.
Yeah.
They do exist, and they are, because they existed before now. God was present at that time. I like what we talked about in the last episode. God's outside of time.
Yeah.
If he can see the end from the beginning and the beginning from the end, it must exist somewhere in some way.
And you can find a little fault with his idea here, because time didn't exist when we were born. Because
it didn't start when we were born.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It existed. We didn't bring it into existence. That's what I'm trying to say, like once we were born. So there was a past, of course, before our existence here. So yeah, there's a little bit of fault there.
Yeah, I agree. I think with what he was working with, he probably did the best that he could.
With what he had, but
I mean, we can look in the Bible and get some better definitions than that. But it's an interesting take nonetheless. But it really shows how impossible it is to try to define time. I mean, if you think about it yourself, how would you define time? If you were to ask a physicist, most physicists would probably say something like time is the way that we measure duration or something like that. And then, all done.
Yeah.
But, it goes deeper than that. Now, in physics, there's this thing called the arrow of time, which is basically the timeline. It points towards the future from the past. And the thought exercise is to think of an arrow, pointing towards the future. So this is what's called the arrow of time. Time moves in a linear direction, in a one-dimensional direction. Now, whether we're moving through time or time is moving around us, who knows? That's interesting to think about too. But one of the ways that we can measure time or the passage of time is by entropy.
Yep.
I actually, in a book that I'm currently working on with Tom Horn, I gave this analogy. If you have something sitting stationary on a desk for an hour, you really don't have any way to know that it's traveling the same way in time as you, that it's not traveling backward in time, which you would think, you would. Why would you not know? But if it's sitting in the same space, the only way that you would be able to tell is entropy, which way the entropy is going. If it gets, maybe an hour isn't long enough, but say, a month. A
couple days.
Yeah, or a couple days or a month. If dust starts to build up on it and it starts looking a little funky, then entropy is running the right way and it's all good. But if it starts looking cleaner and newer and everything, you got some kind of weird time paradox problem.
That's an issue.
And I'm not suggesting that actually happens. This is just a thought exercise. The whole idea came from how to know if particles don't travel faster than light, because the idea is anything traveling faster than light would be going backwards in time. How would you know a particle is doing that? How would you know? Because to you, it might be traveling like backward from its original trajectory, but you don't know the original trajectory. Excuse me. So you could only tell by the entropy and that's a whole bunch of stuff that we don't really need to get into, but it's an interesting side note. So you can measure time based on the amount of entropy. As time goes on, the more chaotic things are, the more disorganized, the more rotted and degraded things are.
Yeah.
We can even see that in like culture and social, like it's everything. And I believe it started in the Garden of Eden.
Yeah. Yep. That's what we discussed before the show. It's like, was that the cause of of sin entering.
Was that the curse? Yeah.
The curse of sin coming into the world, entropy. Things are now degrading because he said that they were going to die, and what causes time and things that come with time, with aging and things like that, is entropy.
Yeah, and it even says that sin entered the world, and it brought like a curse on all creation.
Well, yeah, because he told Adam that he was going to have to plow the fields for his food, and things like that. And I don't know if there were weeds that they had to pull before or things like that.
Probably not.
And so now it's entropy.
Yeah, and I do believe that since God spoke everything to existence, from that point, time existed, but I don't think entropy was a part of it before the fall. And this is just a personal idea. Like, it's not really, there's no Bible verse that says entropy did not exist. But anyway, I don't believe that all this degradation, and because really entropy, what it is it's something that leads to death.
Yeah.
And that we know that at least death didn't exist before the fall. So it would stand to reason entropy may not have either. Now, I do believe time did, because things happened in a sequential order. Things were created and then they existed. And, so there was... there was
a timeline.
There was an order. Yeah, I believe there was time. I just don't believe entropy was a part of it until...
Right.
Adam sinned and brought sin and death into the world, and now we have entropy to deal with. But imagine what that would have been like.
Yeah.
Imagine like you're created and your whole existence, all you know is that everything just is great. Nothing
Perfect.
degrades. That's a completely foreign concept to you. You wouldn't even think of it. Nothing degrades. There is no death.
Think of that. Yeah.
But thank God it's going to be restored to that someday.
Yeah, of course. There's a promise.
Yeah.
Everything is going to be as it was.
Well, we have a lot more to come, and before we get into that, I want to take a break and let you in on some information about a new book by Nita Horn called No Fences. Stay tuned.
From the time she was little, Nita dreamed of horses. Every childhood fantasy rode on the back of a heroic white steed, coming to save the day.
I don't know how long I've had this love in my heart for horses. It's just always been there. And when we were little girls, my sister and I would play all day long. I was always the white horse and she was always the little pink pig.
Let's pretend Lightning and Rosie can fly.
But everything changed in a heartbeat. On December 9th, 1971, a tragic car accident claimed the life of my dad and my best friend and my little sister. And I wondered after that if there was anything left to believe in.
Move aside, let the ambulance through. Please move aside.
As a child of 13, I felt like I had lost practically everything. And I wondered, is this it? I mean, where do I go from here? I could not have imagined back then how God could use horses, of all things, to restore my faith and vision for the future.
Starting April 19th, get your copy of Nita Horn's inspirational new book, No Fences, and learn for the first time her amazing story of loss, survival, determination, and healing. how the vision and love God gave her for these beautiful and majestic animals eventually led to the 150-acre Whispering Ponies Ranch, a general retreat facility, as well as a premier training location that specializes in using and gifting therapeutic animals to benefit the herding. Other care facilities, schools, and ministries across the nation.
When God puts something in your heart, it's there for a lifetime.
And we're back talking about the mysteries of time and entropy. Now, we dealt a lot with entropy. I want to get more into time and what time actually is, because we talked about at the top of the show how would we define it. And I think physics actually gives us a radical but amazing answer, and I believe it's an accurate one. We talked about, in last week's episode, we talked about Planck length, the Planck length, that there is an indivisible length, smallest length possible, and you can't divide it, otherwise black holes and universe ripping apart and horrible things.
You destroy the universe.
Yeah, you destroy the universe, so you just can't do it. Well, time is like that as well. There's actually a thing called Planck time.
Yeah.
Now, where we get this word Planck is from Max Planck. He was a physicist that discovered the Planck constants and all these Planck boundaries and things. So that's the name that we get it from. But he figured out this Planck time thing. Actually, time has a duration where you can't get any shorter than that.
And this is amazing, because this is I'm just going to say it now. It's 10 to the minus 43rd second.
Yeah, so what that is it's 0.43 zeros and a 1. that fraction of a second. Incredibly, I mean, we can't even wrap our heads around how...
I can't even explain it. That's why I just had to say it. It's just so crazy.
And it's the speed that a photon, a particle of light, would travel the Planck length in a vacuum, which is a pretty short trip. I mean, you wouldn't even see it move, but it's that speed. So what that means is, what that all amounts to is that time itself is actually made of these indivisible blocks. I like to think of it as kind of like a film strip.
Yep.
When we look at a film strip, it's basically a series of pictures, and then when they run together fast enough, it kind of tricks our mind into thinking that there's real motion, or like a flip book or something like that.
Yeah.
Time is actually like that. That's what time is. It's these three-dimensional blocks of just completely stationary, but a series of them. And as time moves on, it's one block after another, 10 to the 43, that much in 1 second. So that's a lot of blocks of the entire universe, where each time a new block comes in, there's just a small
change,
just a minute. You can't
tell.
Wrap your head
just
around
like
it.
If you are looking through the film strips when it's not moving, you can't tell.
If you just take one picture out and then another,
you can't put them together and say, "Oh, look, I see the difference."
Yeah.
Or the flip books, you go through them and
it's such a small change. You don't notice it.
You can't even tell it unless you flip it or you play the movie.
Yeah, and time is like that. You can't notice section by section the change that's happening, but when we're existing in it and living it, I mean, an unimaginable amount of these Planck times are happening right now. Billions upon trillions, and just unimaginable. But think about that. That's what time is. Like we exist in a series of these three-dimensional blocks of the entire universe, one after another. It's not this smooth transition. We usually think of time as kind of like a stream, or like just like a smooth. It's not smooth at all. It's clunky, and it's there's everything's this way, and then the next Planck time, everything jumps, and there's no transition between. I can't.
Yeah, you can't wrap your head around that. It's. I don't even know. What to say. It's one of those things. It is, because no matter how much you concentrate on it, you just can't wrap your head around it.
It's impossible. So that's Planck time.
Enjoy that one for a while.
Yeah, think about that one for a while. But it's mind-blowing. But we talked about last week, too, how God's outside of time, and I want to talk about that some more too, because there is, like I mentioned before, there is this idea that because God is outside of time, maybe he's more impersonal, or he's out there in some far off thing that we can't even get our heads around, so it doesn't seem like he's right here with us. But in fact, he is. He's the creator of every single one of those blocks of Planck time. You could never count how many there are, but he's the creator of that from his own voice currently. Yep. So because of that, as we talked about before, time really is a property of space. Time itself isn't its own dimension. I mean, it is if you're only considering temporal dimensions, which as far as we know, there's only one.
There's the space and time.
Yeah, but that dimension of time, it exists in all dimensions of space, as far as we know.
It may move differently than other dimensions, but
maybe, I don't know. That's an interesting question too. Does time move differently in higher dimensions? I used to think so. I used to think it would have to, because it just seems like it should. You know, when I think of heaven, I don't think that time would be the same, but yet I think of heaven.
But at the same time, I'm gonna kind of share part of my testimony here. Sure. When I was 14 in a car accident, I had that experience where I was sort of away from my body. And they said I was gone for maybe an hour, but it only felt like a few seconds.
Yeah.
So, that in between stage where I could sense emotion, I could see shadows, I could see people, I knew where they were. But it felt different. It didn't feel like an hour had passed. It just felt like a few seconds.
And you know, we can even think about when we dream. You know, when I go to sleep and dream, there are times that my dream seems only 5 or 10 minutes, but then I'm asleep for 8 hours.
Yeah, so and that's another thing. They say dreams are like only 3 seconds or something like that. But but
how could so much
happen in 3 seconds?
Yeah, so that's still a question that and part of me wants to say, well, time in the first and second dimensions runs the same as in the third. It would have to, because the first and second are a part of the third. And so it would have to run the same. But there does, so that part of me says, you know, maybe time runs the same in the higher dimensions too. But I don't know, because there seems to be this split between the third spatial and fourth spatial that is just unknown to us. We can't perceive it.
Yeah.
Which actually, speaking of the fall, I think that's when that happened.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I don't know. And you know, when we think about what existence must have been like before the fall, and this is something else that I know Chuck Missler has talked about, and I've written about it too. The first that I heard about it was from Chuck Missler, so I can't take credit for that. But in my book Cherubim Chariots, I talked about the possibility that we may have been, before the fall, extra dimensional. We may have had access to all the dimensions.
Yeah, that's something that's very interesting to think about. Yeah.
And then after the fall, some type of split happened, which might have been what that sword thing was all about.
Oh, yep.
The sword of the cherubim. But some type of split happened where now we don't have access to those higher dimensions anymore.
Yeah, there's a veil between ours and the heavens now.
But the good news, someday,
like the tabernacle.
The
Holy of Holies, and we're the outer court.
Yeah, the good news is that all of this is going to be restored someday when Jesus returns. We're going to have our new bodies, extra dimensional bodies. Yeah. And it's going to be...
everything's going to make perfect sense.
It's going to be phenomenal. My gosh, I can't believe that we only have 2 minutes left. Well, I do... it goes by so fast.
It does.
I do want to talk just to the audience a little bit about this... package deal that Skywatch TV has for my 2 books. It's $29.95, which is normally a $40 value. In it, we actually discuss time and entropy in greater detail, and we have I have a fascinating interview in this book, Quantum Creation, with a physicist named Dr. Ronald Mallet. He's really well known in physics. You've probably seen him on TV if you're interested in these things. He gave me an hour-long interview. I put the whole thing in the book because it was so fascinating. His specialty is black holes and time. He actually he believes that he may have theoretically found a way that time travel could be realized in our lifetimes.
Is he the one that was working on the sending the information forward?
Yes.
Yes. Okay,
Yep.
that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Yep, he was sending the information for
Yeah,
it.
it's a fantastic interview. We talk about different time paradoxes. It's a lot of fun. There's also Cherubim Chariots, where we talk more about the stuff in the garden and the Sword of the Cherubim, that that end of it. Both of these books again are $29.95 at skywatchtvstore.com. Of course, I'm a little biased, so I suggest that you that you get them. But I really don't think that you'll be disappointed, and you're not going to find a better deal outside of Skywatch, not even on my own website. So make sure you take advantage of that. Well, time just flew by, didn't it?
Yeah, but not really.
But not really, exactly.
It's really rough and rigid and three-dimensional blocks.
Yeah. You at home can find us on a wide variety of avenues online. I will pass it off to Christina to tell you what all those are.
We are on Roku, if you have us on Roku, and we are on skywatchtv.com. You can find some information there about our show, and also at youtube.com/skywatchtv_official.
And if you have any questions or suggestions for shows, feel free to email me at jpeck@skywatchtv.com. I would love to read your questions and maybe even read them on the air and see what we can do about answering them. Next week, stay tuned, because next week we're going to be talking about extra-dimensional UFOs. Absolutely fascinating topic, so be sure to not miss that. Well, for Christina Peck and for myself, I want to thank you all so much for joining us into the multiverse. As always, take care and God bless.
To celebrate the release of Nita Horn's inspiring new book, No Fences, Skywatch TV would like you to tell your story, because after all, even if you don't think so, you actually have a story.
Send in your story, and we are going to choose the 10 best, and they'll be published for Christmas release in an anthology of those stories, along with the book that you buy. That is actually only $19.95. Am I right on that?
That's correct.
For free. Tom Horn, crazy guy, he's throwing in a journal, which on its own, most of these retail for $20 on their own. So this journal is to help you start writing your story. When you buy the book, not only are you going to be enrolled in this, and you can send in your story, but you'll get a plastic pony, you'll get a journal of your own, and the proceeds from the book are going to help fund the studio we're building for Skywatch Women, and Nita Horn is going to be one of our panel members.
The 10 authors who are selected for the anthology, published by Defender Publishing in time for Christmas, will also receive a $500 cash prize.
That'll go a long way at Christmas time, won't it?
Yes, it will. Even if your story is not one of those selected for the anthology, if you've taken the time to write your story, you've left a legacy for your children and for your grandchildren.
Amen to that.
For complete instructions and details on this opportunity, please log on to skywatchtv.com/nofences.